Hello.
Hello. We getting started right this second, or do we still have 5 minutes?
We still have some time.
Okay. We have to go off and grab food, so one moment.
No worries. How's everybody doing this fine Wednesday? Yeah. Same. Oh, both of those are private to me. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, my bad. For some reason, it's only locked on private. I don't know
Really?
why. Yeah.
Huh.
I just noticed that just now.
Weird. Yeah. Participant can chat with. Oh. Huh. Has that always been the setting? It's
I
weird.
don't think so. I just noticed that today, I think.
Yeah, I am also exhausted. That's what everybody wants in an election, right? Uncertain results where everybody's just unhappy all around.
How is it this close? It's depressing. I'm having a nervous breakdown. Like, actually.
Yeah. This is we live in a very divided country.
On that note, we also kind of like live in a divided state. I mean, when you sit there and think about it, the people who vote the most blue is just Reno and Las Vegas, and everything else, all the other counties are like completely red. And that's no problem with that.
Right.
It's just like, yeah, I don't know.
Right.
Right now it's like 8,000 votes apart in Nevada from flipping either side, so.
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just saying we're just waiting on Michigan because they're literally at 99% reporting, and that's just one of the states that are kind of crucial right now. And I'm like, it's fine. Nervous breakdown all morning since 6 a.m.
Wayne County. Why do you never disappoint me? Wayne County, Fulton County, DeKalb, Cobb, Washoe. Should know these. Why do I know these? Yeah. We live in a world that yeah, and then all of Pennsylvania's whatever's going on over there. Yeah. Fun times. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I don't mean to get really political. If anything, whether I don't really per se care about the sides, but it's like I'm more scared of like the civil unrest. Because, like, I don't know. It's like this election seems everyone's on edge. Like, even 2016, there was like the protests, like students protesting, that like that's not our president. But I don't believe it got violent at all. And I feel I'm kind of scared about this upcoming times, and I really hope that that's not the case.
Yeah. There's an analysis that was done recently about was it political tension, and they were mapping on political tension over the past 20 or 30 years with the kind of tension that we had in this country leading up to the Civil War. Now, I always worry about these analyses because there's so many choices that go into making them.
They kind of smack of self-fulfilling prophecy to me. It's like you look into it if you're trying to figure out, okay, should we panic? Should we be concerned? But by looking at it and then constructing this is mirroring situations of the past, you almost construct the same kind of situation. Because surely the people who were fighting the civil wars in the past probably had very similar conversations just before it went down. I'm not saying that, it's not something to be concerned about. I'm just saying that there's a little bit of, I have had different live feeds going, and I just switch between them when a state flips just to see everyone's reaction. And it's bizarre. They frame it in entirely different circumstances. So there's one dude who's like, oh yeah, Trump is announcing a coup today. And then someone else is like, Democrats are literally committing voter fraud. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. I did my civic duty. I was a filthy nonpartisan. And I don't care about the party's dramas. Could not care less anymore.
I don't even know.
You probably should care. Just saying.
Okay, I have to speak in again. It's up to you. I mean, I could see people going nonpartisan because sometimes getting heavily into that politics is just really depressing sometimes, you know? And kind of ignoring it, even though I feel like it's not the best.
I apologize. I was trying to sort of cut off the conversation because I didn't want to drag politics kicking and screaming into lecture. But to clarify, no, what I was saying was I don't like the party rhetoric, how it's framed. I think that's actively making the problem worse.
Fair. It is the day after a massive presidential election. I think it's hard to get lots of things done in most classes. But yeah.
I like how Trump just said, "Oh, I won at 2:30 in the morning." What was the hell is he doing at 2:30 in the morning? My God, eat some more of whatever you get from that doctor. Come on, holy shit.
He's all like, the ballots are just appearing out of nowhere, and I'm like,
that's how
no.
Oh yeah, and I'm gonna call the Supreme Court and just be like, "Hey, man, I just think you should stop all the votes now."
The thing is that we've extended
all the counting of all the votes. Just stop them now. I mean,
yeah,
people vote for that guy. I don't know. I don't want to bring it up either.
So the point is,
I just can't get over the head of the EPA. Oh, an oil lobbyist for the oil companies. Let's make him he should be able to be fired for that. I mean, come on. Jeez Louise.
Would you believe that a company is actually flying under the banner Soylent? It's like Skynet. Like, there's some brand names where I'm like, why would you adopt these?
There's the world's broken. One thing that bothered me yesterday that I don't think anybody here followed was that Alaska seems to have defeated their initiative to push for ranked choice voting, which is one of those things where I think like, that just feels like the best system. Why don't we ever do that?
Is that like how France? I know France has like 30 parties and it's all, majority doesn't win. Is that that system?
It's closer to like a Roman system where you rank the candidates, and then if your pick number one doesn't win, your vote automatically.
Oh, okay. I rank them on my ballot. I rank my.
Yeah, and then first one who gets a absolute majority is declared winner.
Okay.
So the system gives you like the person everyone is the most okay with, but there's a center squeeze effect. So I mean, I don't know. Humans are weird.
It is the kind of thing that I think fundamentally would change the dynamics of politics, because when there's two options, you can either advocate for yourself or attack the alternative. But if there's multiple options, everything changes. Anyway, yeah, sorry,
okay.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know if anybody actually went to the lines to the polling booths yesterday. The lines are pretty long. It was like at least a 45-minute wait. And my biggest question is, why don't we have like days off for election day? Why isn't that like not a national holiday or something like that?
It's handled state by state, and the grand majority of states just don't for whatever reasons.
It's dumb, but okay.
I think
Well,
Basically, like if you ask for the day off to go vote, you're like, for most businesses, they are allowed to let you have the day off.
Okay.
But they're not required to pay you during that time.
No,
Yeah.
but the cooler ones do, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Fun fact: when the United States was formed, 6% of people were eligible to vote.
I know.
We've-
Rich white landowners. Protestant. Jeez Louise.
We've increased that a
It's
little
amazing.
bit.
It's like, I don't.
We have hung on
I
to a
can't even really
system
think.
that is meant to consolidate the votes in a time where the fastest means of communication was dude on a horse. And we're like, oh yeah, no, this system totally works in an era with modern, almost as fast as light communication. We totally still need to have states assigned one color or the other to pick dudes to go and do the voting, as opposed to just counting the voting.
We have when I lived in Canada, it was fascinating to me because you can declare an election whenever, but you can just say, okay, the election will happen, and you have 6 weeks. The starter pistol goes off, and everybody has 6 weeks to like marshal their candidates and like jockey for position. In the United States, because we were advocating for farmers at some point, we have an election in November of even-numbered years every 2 years, the first Tuesday after the first Monday. Because farming.
Because you had to be to church on Sunday and you had to assume at least a day of travel to get from where you are to where you're voting.
Okay, so all right. I should get to some class stuff if you guys want. We don't have to. Whatever. The world's whatever. Well, is anybody ecstatic about the outcome that is undecided?
Wait, no, but Nevada's the first state to protect same-sex marriage in its constitution, so that's good.
Yeah, I saw that on the state questions. I was like, huh, we weren't already doing that. Well,
Yeah.
should probably
Oregon-
rectify that.
Oregon got the substance issues out of the criminal arena and put it in the health
Yeah.
arena finally. With
But then
all,
the stuff with abortion in
all
Louisiana.
substances being
so-
a civil matter now instead of criminal.
Yeah.
Possession of everything. So that's a
But
positive
abortion
step.
isn't protected anymore, I think, or I forgot what it was, but
in Louisiana.
yeah.
Right. That was a
that's
weird one.
fine.
And ballot initiative 6 passed here, right? The renewable energy by 2030.
Did it really?
I can check. I have the
Yes.
Associated Press on another thing. Just gotta. Oh, so many things I have to click. That is not what I need to click. That is what I need to click. Yes, we have 75% reporting and 56.5 roughly for. So it could go the other way. There are some strange places in Nevada that, have their own opinions. But
Right.
we're not going to know until the 17th, probably, because that's when most of the mail-ins are going to come in, and everyone's going to want to demand a recount. And you can't demand a recount until you've had every vote canvassed. So it's like, look, we're not going to know until January.
I have a non-election related question really fast. For the quizzes, I can't see them. Am I just not looking in the right place, or it's saying they're like unpublished?
We switched modules, and I have to publish each module separately. Yep. Okay. I'll do that at
okay.
the end of. Yeah, damn it.
I
the
just wanted to
entire
make sure it
module.
wasn't me.
Okay, I'll take care of that at the end of class if somebody reminds me.
Thank you.
I also realized that I'm in another class. I'm about to make them a really nice offer, but you guys are a good class too, and so I should probably make you an offer as well. But first, I need one volunteer. Who's going to volunteer?
Do I need to get up out of the chair?
You don't,
I'm not
Chris?
scared. Yes.
Okay, cool. Can you just type down very quickly everybody that's in the that's here, and
Okay.
send that to me in some way?
Yes, just like private chat.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'll probably be asking for that same volunteer for the rest of the semester, if that's cool. It doesn't, I mean, you don't have to be the one to do it, but so in an effort to just make the end of the semester easier for everybody, I'm going to make a wonderful offer. You don't have to take it. And the people that aren't in this room right now, the like 15 of the people that have just stopped showing up, which is fine. I'm cool with that. It's fine. They don't have to know about this offer. I mean, I don't care. Whatever, you can tell them if you want. I'm willing to let you guys decide to replace the upcoming midterm with just a positive attendance conversation grade. Is that good? Yeah?
I mean, I'm not going to say no. I've not come this far in life by saying no to offers like that. But I'm not going to speak for my kindred. What do the rest of you say?
Does that just mean if we show up consistently and talk sometimes, we just get like a 100 for the midterm?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I am 100% for that.
I like that.
I'm just like, I'm insanely overwhelmed.
It sounds like a trick, but that's because I'm old and jaded.
I'm just overwhelmed myself, and I cannot imagine what it's like to be a student in this time. So,
oh my gosh, my daughter's school just closed. She goes to the Waldorf Academy here, and a kid in one of her classes, and so they're just now. I have 3 screaming kids going to school as well as me, all in my little apartment.
I have lived a bit of a life to accumulate the funds to go and be into Zoom meetings like this. I am paying for this out of my own pocket because student loans are the devil. I had to take the first student loan because of this nonsense. But more importantly, all the contacts I've made across this nation and in weird places like Jamaica for some reason have all gone out like little stars in the sky because they either caught it or some sort of chaos went down or they can't pay their phone bill. So I've been cut off from all of my trusted sources of information and I am losing my fucking mind because now I have to look at goddamn CNN.
All right, dude.
So what if we have good attendance and participation and we do the midterm?
Then
I still might do the midterm.
I don't know.
I think he's kind of getting at that he doesn't want to grade them. I'm not.
No,
I mean, I know that you would if you had to, right? Yeah. But I think if you're doing the attendance thing and you're showing up, then you might as well just do that and put all of your effort into like attending.
Yeah, he's already gonna have to grade 15. I mean, that's already way too many.
I was supposed to get a TA this semester, and that didn't happen for reasons.
Hey, Carlos.
Yeah.
Are we still supposed to set up individual Zoom meetings with you to like do a little discussion? Is that still going on?
Yeah, I think I've had one with most of you. I guess not you.
I mean,
Yeah. That'd be good.
Okay, cool. I'll just. Do you want to just send me, or no? I guess. Should I? Are you still doing those, or are you too busy? Because it sounds like
I'm busy, but I'm still doing them.
For
it's a
sure.
Nice break in my day.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll email you about it.
We need to set one of those up.
So Alyssa, to answer your cool, thank you.
Okay, is that I can redo it better? And I don't know Desmos' last name, so it's Desmos Face.
Desmos Face is right. It's not even. It's your middle name too. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I swear I changed it at one point, but it's like the default name, so now it just memorizes it for different devices, which is cool.
I don't know how to set up a name on Zoom, so I've just been like, yeah, fuck it, have the name.
And I probably spelled some wrong, but that's because I.
You're good. You're good. That's good. But to Alyssa and Christopher, if you really want to take the exam, I don't know. You can. That's cool too. I don't know if this offer would translate to the final paper, because I think writing a paper is probably more important than an exam. I don't much care about the content. The content's interesting, and it's cool to learn this stuff, but learning how to write a paper is a skill that's going to go with you farther in life than I think learning this content. And I'm one of the best writers I know. I'm definitely an asshole when it comes to editing. So, but yeah, if you want, we can talk about any. Do you just want to do it just for the sake of it, or?
Well, I was wondering if it would be like an extra credit thing, or if it just would be like extra for no reason.
I'll just do it in my head. That'll be fine for me.
If it's extra credit, yeah, that's interesting.
Couldn't you like kind of convert an essay into an extra credit submission, like an essay that you were going to do for the midterm? You would just have to spruce it up a bit.
Let's break up all of those 4 essays, or all of the 8 essays that I gave you the options to. All of those could be extra credit. Each of those could be an extra credit point if you wanted. Okay. 21 minutes. We should probably start class. Guess. Why the hell?
Probably the thing.
It's emotions today, right? Or did I miss a class?
No, emotions is next week. This is embodiment right now. And emotions is what follows from this. So we got embodied cognition. Embodied cognition is kind of cool because it like directly leads into emotions. And the basic idea is, well, I'll go into it. There's a couple of different ways we mean when we talk about embodied cognition. And any of these, that's why it's like a cluster of views. Like you can accept any of these and be an embodied cognition person. And I think a lot of people accept at least some of these. So for example, I know that you know something about your house or I know you know where to find information that you don't actually have access to. Right? Like something that you put somewhere that you know where it is. And so some people would say that is just you offloading some cognitive resources onto the environment. And in some views, that just is your mind being extended somewhat. You're extending it onto the world. Sort of makes sense, right? Like this really happens with like partners, right? If you've been married with someone for a long time, you know that there's some things that they'll remember for you and that they'll do for you, and vice versa. You know, but there's a bunch of other alternative things that are in the cluster of views called embodied cognition. That are aside from the work, from the environment playing a role in your reasoning. And I'd like separate them into maybe 2 different clusters. One is the one that I just said about the the environment being out in the world. And the other one is about quickness of action. that sometimes your body is making decisions quickly, that you have to like make decisions, and so you're deciding based on how you react to things. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to say on that. There's a bunch of like debate back and forth on this, and in the video I talk about that in a lot of detail. But one of the cool things about the view of embodied cognition is that it sort of makes sense of one of these fundamental problems that comes up for other mental architectures. So we've talked about classical views, right? That was the vegetable section of this class, where I'm like, oh, you have to learn this, we can talk about this stuff later. Yeah. And connectionist views, we talked about that. So like, let's say you're trying to define a concept like a chair or a desk or a snowman or a ninja star or something cool. In the classical view, you either have to like already know it, or it has to be somehow put in your mind, right? So this is what leads some people in the modularity discussion or the concepts discussion to just be like, no, you're just born with like all of these concepts that you could ever encounter. That's why people tend to come to the idea of blue or green and not like a mixed color that's like blue before 10:30 and green afterward. And like, there's just some concepts that even though they're consistent, we just don't have them. So some people have like gone to this extreme view where they're like, no, you're born with all of these concepts. You just have to like apply them in the world in some way. And then the connectionist view is similar, right? Like you just come up with like ways of organizing based on failing again and again, and you your mind starts to define concepts like chair or table or whatever based on times that you have failed given other views. But like in all of these, it implies that there is some way of checking if you're right or wrong, right? Like in the cognitive architectures, in order to understand what's in your mind, you have to like think that there's a way of figuring out if you're right about what you think about the world. The embodied approach sort of does away with this. Your body is doing some of the stuff because it is the one that's interacting with the world. It's like thwacking into stuff. And that's, I don't know, that might be useful. So in the video, the transition here is a little bit smoother, but one approach of embodied cognition is the philosopher's approach, where we just talk about how the environment matters and how like we must reason quickly. And the other is the engineer's approach, which is how if an engineer is trying to like come up with an intelligent robot, let's say, then they need to figure out how to make the robot act in the world. And it turns out it's really, really hard to program all of the possible environments ahead of time. So if you're like programming a robot to go out and do stuff, it's really, really hard to say, well, you might encounter a desk that's this tall or this tall or this tall. If this, then do that. So what engineers have been doing in the biorobotics approach is developing robots that have lots of like very simple processing going on, but there's just like layered on top of each other. That part makes sense? I'm worried that this is a weird transition.
Yeah, no, Vsauce had a video on this. This is the, okay, if pixel detects, light or dark, light up X neurons. If X neurons are lit up, then you can build letters out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, you can have very, very, very simple things, but if you just add a bunch of like simple processing, just like if yes or no, if like run into wall, turn around, if whatever. But if you keep layering them on top of each other, eventually you can get to like really, let's see if I can do this. You can get to really complex behaviors. Click. There we go. Oh, I have to turn off the sound or something. Otherwise you guys won't hear it. Not that the sound matters in this. So this might be a bit too complicated to see all of the moving parts.
Was that a program sequence, or was that like that's crazy? Like
Okay.
I thought they were just barely getting robots to be able to walk through a construction site.
No, we're pretty far up. We're doing some really complex, cool stuff. Sorry,
yeah, like so you could drop that robot like in a city block and it would do parkour.
Yes, presumably, yeah. But like the cool thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Really cool. That's amazing. That's yeah. I hate being all of a sudden old.
It happens to all of us. It'll happen to the rest of you too. But yeah, no. This is the interesting thing about this is, in order to program something that complicated, you don't actually need to program as much as you would have thought, right? Like some people have programmed hands, like robotic hands, and it turns out that all you have to do is like program each part to like compress at a certain rate, and when they find a little bit of resistance, you stop. To program bird flocking behavior, like the V shape, all you have to do is program something like keep the dark shape 35 degrees to your right or left, and you get the flying V, right? Like these very, very simple things that it turns out when you're trying to build up a complex cognitive robot, the machinery will do so much more of the work than we thought it would. So the idea here in embodied cognition is that the environment matters more than we thought that it did. That the stuff that we thought was complex and cognitive was actually a lot more embodied than we thought that it was. Like our bodies matter to thinking.
I have a question about the robot.
Sure.
What was it being programmed to do? Was it just doing things on its own, or was it being remote controlled?
This one I'm not sure, but there's other examples of the same robot where it's just asked to go from like one place to another, and it like hops over boxes and stuff.
Oh, and it just does it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it turns out that we can make really complex looking behavior from very simple layers and layers of simple decision making, simple architectures. All right, how do I keep moving without, how do I get out of this thing? Nope. Oh. There we, nope. Shouldn't be this difficult. Okay, hold on 1 second. Okay. So that's embodied cognition. It's like really, it's a cool idea that just basically it raises the bar for what needs to count as cognitive, or maybe lowers the bar. Whatever it does, it changes the question. And you can actually believe in embodied cognition and accept that there are still some classical cognitive architectures in how we process, for example, learning or understanding languages, or connectionist architectures in how we learn languages, right? Like all of this way of mental organizing can actually fit together quite nicely, which is what's frustrating about how these are always pitted as alternatives to each other. But I guess that's how you get tenure. Okay. So now let's move on to something called the somatic marker hypothesis. The somatic marker hypothesis was something proposed in the 1990s, which I think also helps us realize the importance of aspects of our body or aspects of our cognition to other aspects of our cognition that we did not think would be relevant to each other, right? In the same way that you wouldn't think that how your muscles bend will influence your cognition, you might not think that your emotions matter for reasoning. But it turns out that all of it might matter. You might process the world in terms of objects that you can grasp because you have hands that grasp, as opposed to other ways that you would imagine processing the world. So in order to move to the somatic marker discussion, I need to talk about this ventromedial prefrontal cortex damage. And there's this dude. You guys seen that guy's face before? Yeah, super.
Ah, Phineas Gage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little ironic of a name in a way. Anyway, so Phineas Gage is one of neuroscience's most famous historical figures. He had a railroad spike that he's holding right there go through his head, damage a certain part of his brain, and he became an asshole afterward. That's the short story. Part of it may be exaggerated, but he definitely couldn't keep a job afterward. So we've been able to reconstruct a lot of the damage that he had with computers and looking at his skull, which is still preserved. And it turns out that there's one area of the brain that he had damage that some people are fascinated with, in this case, a man named Antonio Damasio, because he had studied other patients that had damage to this area called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is, it's in your brain. I can triangulate it, but
well, it's where the red thing is, right? In your slide.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's one part of the red thing. Yeah. It's definitely destroying it. It's like going straight through it.
It's the bit that's in front of your temples but behind your forehead.
Yeah. It turns out that it's an important area because it's the area that connects the neocortex to the amygdala, basically the reasoning to the emotional centers. And so the patients that we have detected since Phineas Gage that have had this kind of damage, it turns out have a lot of similar characteristics. They are really bad at making decisions. They're bad at detecting sarcasm or irony. They're susceptible to deception and misleading advertisements. They can be crude and uncaring, etc. It can be much, much worse if it's damaged in early childhood. If it's damaged later on, some people call it like acquired sociopathy, right? Or acquired. People that have this damage just become jerks, or at least there's certain consequences that are both jerk-like and inability to prioritize and to make decisions. And so this is the somatic marker hypothesis. Essentially, what Damasio suggests is that as you go through your life, you mark certain actions and behaviors and decisions as good or bad. And so your body starts associating certain actions or behaviors or judgments as good or bad. And your body starts signaling to you later on when things feel good or bad, so that it like helps you make decisions later on. It's this idea of like a gut feeling, perhaps. You just feel bad in a certain scenario and you want to like leave, or you want to, I don't know, or you have a good feeling about something. So, bah! It's supposed to scare you. And the fun part is both normal patients and patients that had VMPFC damage were scared when a large sound appeared to startle them. In fact, it's not just normal controls, but controls with different kinds of brain damage had the same sort of response. Their skin conductivity increased, and it was measurably, it was measurable that their skin got more clammy. I'm sorry, Miles. But when it's an emotionally evocative stimuli, so suppose that I had not shouted, ah, but instead I had just shown like a scary picture or like some gnarly gore or something. For those of us with normal control brains would react, our skin conductivity would be measurably increased, right? Or so goes the hypothesis and the observation. People with the MPFC damage do not have that reaction. So that's one little bit of evidence. It's an interesting bit of evidence. Cool. All right. The one that Damasio really hangs his head on, which I'm not sure I even like as much as the other example, is this Iowa gambling test. And I have tried to run this with friends of mine just to see if it works. And like I would get a deck of Uno cards and like go through it and take out certain cards and then put them available for people to like pick a card. And so if you choose A or B, you gain about 100 every card, but every once in a while with A, 1 out of 10 times, you'll lose $1,250. With B, about half the time you'll lose $250. With C and D, you get a smaller reward, but with C, you lose as often as you gain. And with D, you lose 5 times as much, a tenth of the time. Sort of makes sense? So what happens is, as you're drawing cards, and this is according to controlled studies, I've tried to repeat this on my own in very uncontrolled circumstances, and I've never gotten it to repeat, but maybe you could. What happens is people eventually learn to only choose from decks C and D. Most people. And in fact, normal controls, when you measure their skin conductivity as they're hovering over A and B, after the first couple of cards that they draw, they start getting clammy and they start getting slower at reaching for A and B. But they don't have that same response to C and D. Whereas people with VMPFC lesions never quite pick up on this distinction. They could eventually reason themselves to it, but they never actually like figure out what's going on through their feelings, through the like. And it's funny to actually see this, like, you know, I tried doing this with your friends. I just got an Uno deck and I like made up my own version that sort of matched this. You like see them get like scared as they reach for any of the decks. They're just worried about stuff now. But people with this kind of damage don't. And this is supposed to be evidence that maybe that's what's happening to all of the time with all of our decisions to all of us. That the decisions that we think are purely rational, purely cognitive, purely reasoned, actually have a little bit of our body, like our previous emotional response to similar decisions, marked onto them. That makes sense? Kind of cool.
Especially if you were to attach a galvanic test to the hands.
Yeah.
I'm doing that for another class to test intuition.
Really? What are you doing there?
Remember when I was talking about bilingualism?
Yeah.
And intuition? Yeah, this is one of the aims that I chose to test that theory.
Cool.
I'm assuming that bilingualism, well, if you were to compare this with those that are bilingual and monolingual, if you were to run the same test and you were to put the galvanic skin test, those that are bilingual should be demonstrating like higher pulses of that sweating, giving them that higher intuition that, yeah, you shouldn't go for that hand.
Cool. That's awesome. Let me know how that turns out. Yeah.
I will.
Yeah, that's cool. So, okay. Yeah, should I just go to the prompt? We're not going to break out into rooms. We spent too much time talking about the world, which I'm cool with. I hope you guys are okay with too. So, okay, what do you all think about the role that your body might play in your reasoning, both cognitive, both just in general and in terms of like making good and bad decisions?
Can you repeat the question? Oh, sorry, my bad.
I just have a question first.
Sure.
The damage to the prefrontal cortex, isn't the prefrontal cortex like the newest part of the brain that a lot of animals don't have?
Yes.
So is what is connecting our body to our I don't understand the connection between the prefrontal cortex and like how our body affects our logic, I guess.
Not the prefrontal cortex. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. I just am confused about the connection. Because like a lot of animals don't have it, but they still, I don't know, they still make decisions about things and like feel emotional connections with their decisions, I think.
I think, what would I say? So the frontal, it's all about abstract and reasoning and future-oriented decision-making, which I think a lot of, at least a lot of evolutionary approaches will say that it's much more, that's the more recently evolved, and that's the part that's going to involve those areas of the brain more.
So animals just don't need it like we do? Or they, I don't know.
Okay, I think the idea is that like the specific embodiment of any kind of rationale is going to be really important for that rationale itself. Like the fact that your cognition is within your specific body is like, I want to say profoundly important, but that doesn't really mean anything. But like your cognition supersedes with your biology. It's kind of like how we were talking about, and maybe I'm wrong here, Carlos, but it reminds me of talking about like how gut biomes can affect your thinking and stuff like that. And we're coming at this from the context of those classical cognitive architectures who were really ambitious with thinking that they could kind of like boil down intelligence to these like mathematical or abstract entities that, you know, then you have to worry about, oh, what do these look like in the physical world? And I think maybe that's what the embodiment solution is trying to do. It's saying, this is what it looks like in the physical world. Cognition is like a biological process, or at least very sensitive to it.
One way I like to look at the embodiment question that sort of helps me out with this, because I had a lot of trouble with not seeing the distinction between this. There is this parasite that when it infects the ant, it's a fungus, but the ant goes up the stalk and bites the stalk because it doesn't know any better, because the fungus has manipulated that physical matrix that would be its cognition. If something similar were to happen to a person, it would change not just your perception, but your ability to think about that perception. That's what the Phineas Gage example shows, is there's a chunk of the brain that if you knock it out, you're just never going to get sarcasm again. That is the sarcasm nugget of the brain. Maybe leave it alone.
So is it that part of the brain that's mostly connected with this situation? Like embodiment is more correlated with the prefrontal cortex than any other part of the brain?
Well, no, I the way I would put it is evolution didn't throw anything away, and it didn't start from scratch.
Yeah.
So all of the complex reasoning, the abstract reasoning, the future-oriented thinking that we think is so special, and so like the ability to do like logical proofs or calculus in your head or whatever, that we think makes us special, that non-human animals don't have. That's still going to be connected to our body. So everything is connected to our bodies in some way.
Okay.
I feel like I'm still not at, like, you still have a quizzical look.
So can you damage a different part of the brain and still get that effect where they no longer have a bodily response to things?
You can damage all sorts of part of the... Which bodily response are you talking about? The skin, the galvanic response?
Like I guess the intuition that we get, our gut feeling that we get in those situations, like with the card game you created.
Right. So I think good. Yeah, if you like somehow, so that would be the assumption of the somatic marker hypothesis, that because that is the shortest route between the emotional centers and the reasoning centers, then in the future all of your reasoning would not have any of that bodily connection, or at least your reasoning it'd be hard to connect it to your body in some way.
Okay.
So this is like just one part of embodiment, right? I think that's what we're kind of getting caught on, is like there are other aspects of embodiment that aren't just related to like the, what is it, somatic marker hypothesis.
Right.
So like, for example, I'm pretty sure this is like same kind of thing, but they've done experiments where they've like sewn the fingers of a monkey together, and then in the brain, the what is it, like the centers for like finger touch were no longer separated for those two fingers. So it's like the brain considered that as one single finger instead of like two fingers that were sewn together. So that would mean like the way that your body is actually interacting with the world maps onto your mind in a specific way, which then controls for the ways that you can interact with the world.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess my question was more about like where in the brain this is happening, but I guess that's kind of a broad question that we don't even have the answer to.
Well, I mean, another way of approaching this, embodiment is very much a response to dualism. It's everything having an anchor, even if you don't necessarily understand it, which lets you do spooky things. Like if you take a little itty bitty needle and you whisk the bit of the brain that lets you identify what you're seeing, you give someone blindness essentially with this needle, but you don't take out the nerves and the bits that are responding to them, you can get somebody who's blind but will dodge things that are thrown at them.
Yeah.
Because those are different parts of the system. So having everything have a physical bit of neuron or intelligent pudding, if you will, in the soup of the skull, it's more that it's... I'm sorry, I had it and I lost it. It's been a day.
Fair.
Hey, Carlos.
Yeah.
So embodiment doesn't have to be organic, right? Like you
Right.
said, you can kind of offload cognition through writing and stuff like that. And what Jackson was mentioning about how how the two fingers became like cognitively, I guess, represented differently because the embodied experience was changed. It made me think of like colloquial or like anecdotal, maybe even like analogies where like if you're training in something like the old samurai movies, if you want to get better at the sword, you have to think of it as like an extension of your body. Or maybe if someone's really familiar with a sport like tennis, like that familiarity and the embodiment of the tennis racket actually alters their cognition, you know, with like motor control and basically, I guess, everything, you know, anything that would require cognition. So like, I think that's a cool way to think about embodiment without just overly focused on like physiology. Which
Yeah,
is
that goes both ways. As well with like what you're saying, as far as like the tennis. Like I was a club pro when I was your guys' age at golf, and it's the way you think about this, the movement and the tools that you use. It gets to where, I mean, the only way anybody ever excels to any kind of level is by they sync up into a. They can't be separated. If they're separated, the less skilled you are at it. I mean, at one point when you're swinging a tennis racket or golfing, or you know, I've heard other sports, but I played those two. It gets to where there's the cognition and the environment. You know, thinking of the thing or decision making, like you know, on a golf shot, particular ones, all are, I mean, it's like it becomes one thing, you know, and you notice, like looking in hindsight, when you play your best, it's because there's the cognition and the movement are singular. It's creepy.
Yeah, it's its own form of like intelligence in a way, for sure.
And then in that moment, how like do we separate that from procedural memory?
Cool.
And how like you're learning all these things and like as opposed to being thrown into a completely new situation, and how like your body will respond to that, and I guess like the level between your body's response and your own decision making skills in that sense.
Right. So all of the things that we were talking about there are, you know, like riding a bike, or they're like a bodily like skills. And they're going to involve more than just it's going to be more than just your cerebellum, right? Like you're going to be thinking about what you want to do. You're going to be incorporating your goals. You're going to be incorporating your understanding of the rules. Yeah, how does procedural memory fit into that?
I think it's kind of cool how, sorry, I don't know if you're trying to find it, but I think it's kind of cool how, like our definition for information that you gave on the glossary, the resolution of an uncertainty, it kind of applies to both views of cognition, like the classical cognition and then the embodied cognition. And I think like processing, or what did she say? Mental processing or memory, long-term memory processing. I think that's very like abstracted into like, okay, what is being processed, and it's information. And through the embodied theory, you kind of, I guess it makes what's being processed a little more feasible, right? It's offloaded, or not even offloaded, but it's embodied like pieces of cognition are what's being processed. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of cool how like that definition of information seems kind of weird, because it's not like, when I think of information, I think of data, like things being processed or transferred, but then you realize, oh, what is data? And this kind of makes information more of an activity, which kind of like melds really well with both embodiment and the classical architectures, which are more like procedural and stuff like that.
Let me give you guys two scenarios, and tell me if any of you have examples with either of these. The first is somebody that's like an expert in playing guitar or some skill that you ask them how to do something and they don't know how to do it until they actually have it in their hands, right? And then the second is like maybe you break your hand, or you break a leg or something, and you actually find it more difficult, or like if you're a person that talks with your hands a lot, somebody just ties your hands down and you can't speak, or and you find it more difficult to even think about certain things. Has anybody experienced one or the other?
I have for the first one. I play a lot of games, and I have for my whole life. And there'll be games that I've played for like 10 years where someone asks me what the buttons do, and I cannot tell them until I have the actual controller in my hand. Because I don't really think about like, this button does this. It's more like, oh, I move my finger in this way to do this.
But you're not even thinking of that sentence, I move my finger in this way. You're like literally just thinking moving finger, right? Like it's your,
yeah.
I think with dance, it's a similar thing too. Like you can do it, and then someone's like, teach me. And then you try to do it slowly, and you're like, what? Like you don't know how to do it anymore, and you can only do it like faster.
That's cool. That's a good one.
I used to pace a lot when I was a kid because homeschooled and didn't really have anyone who I actually like knew was my own age. And today, whenever I need to actually think about something, it's easier when I'm actually in motion walking. Even if I'm just walking a circle around, just doing laps around like the house. Not jogging, just walking. To the point where it's like sometimes when I'm working on assignments, it's like, all right, I need to take off for an hour because apparently the legs are doing the thinking for me.
I've heard this construed in an interesting, like, physiological way, where the reason a lot of people overdose on drugs is not because they took an exceptional dose. It's because they took a dose they've been taking for a while in an unfamiliar environment. So it's almost as if the body, or just their physiology, just broadly construed, is experiencing that same sort of unfamiliarity, and it doesn't know how to handle it the same way.
Interesting. Huh.
And in the same way, like placebo effects, I think would be a really good tie-in, because it's like you're taking something that does nothing, and you're purely changing your physical state based on what you think is going to happen. In the same way that, like, if you're using a drug in an unfamiliar environment, just the fact that you're in a psychologically new place with an extra load can be overwhelming.
That's why they say that when you're studying for something, you should like sit in the same place, wear the same outfit, have the same perfume or whatever that you expect.
Yeah, state-dependent learning. Yeah.
Right. Maverick, were you saying something earlier?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna add to like your second example, like when I'm coaching or subbing, I always have something in my hand, whether it's a timer, a pen, pencil. If I don't have something in my hand, it's a lot hard. I don't know why, but it's a lot harder to teach or to coach, just because I'm used to having something in my hand all the time, whether even in class, I just have a pencil or a paper in my hand. But then when I have nothing, it's like my hands don't know what to do.
That's interesting.
It reminds me of like Buddhist meditation, like beads or prayer beads for kind of any religion. I always thought it was just something to like keep your mind semi-distracted so you can get in a meditative state a little easier. But maybe it's they access a meditative state with that in their hand, and that's like sort of something we've been talking about, where it's not a somatic marker, but it kind of like primes your body, or at least your cognition recognizes, oh, we're about to do a certain function or something's about to happen. Let's get ready for it, or let's make it more conducive.
That's cool. So I hadn't thought about that one in that particular way, but I like that. I love that we all have examples of this, right? Like this is like a thing that is once you have words for it, you start seeing it everywhere, and I mean it shows you how important you know, your body might be to certain things that you wouldn't have thought that it was. Even things that seemed very, very rational, right? Like, yeah, just being able to like know that you could write things down. Like sometimes I'm like laying out a class and I can't think of all of the thoughts together, and I have to like imagine them somewhere and like put objects in to represent how things are and like move things around. I don't know. It's cool.
Well, one of the ways they tested that one guy, one of the tests that guy made to try to prove his semantic marker hypothesis was an issue of like statistic odds with those cards, right? And the idea is that emotionally healthy people who haven't had something shoved through their brain will eventually like enjoy this kind of emotional rationality that can handle odds or statistics, you know, given enough tries, better than I feel like a lot of people are consciously confident of handling statistics, coming at it like fresh from a new perspective, or like someone that doesn't have that kind of emotional rationality available. But yeah, which is cool.
That's cool. And yet when you study poker, like they warn you about following your emotions.
Right.
Yeah.
Because rationality can be wrong too, right? It's not like necessarily very logical rationality, but there's some kind of rationality always present.
Yeah, and you can't win with scared money. I mean, that's a gambling saying. It's like the more skilled gamblers they do the opposite of like a golfer or a tennis player. They try to disconnect the body's reactions to what they're thinking about.
Because if they smell blood, they're going to eat you alive. I used to work with people who counted cards, so I'm like intimately familiar with the entire casino arrangement. And no, they're all like, nope, gotta be icy. And here's not gonna go on that rant right now.
Like whatever your body's telling you, it's like you got to just go by what the system is.
Some of them would actually go ahead.
So I was just going to ask, like, how much of that distinction between Desmo's original suggestion and the gambling case is the fact that in the gambling case, there's literally another person who's your opponent, right? Like in the Iowa gambling task, it's you against raw statistics. In the other, there's a human being that's.
But that's like what Joseph was saying. Like with blackjack, it's not. It's literally just a statistic thing. Like
if you are seriously gambling, then the dealer is going to be someone who's going to be on your radar because of certain scenarios that might arise. Because when you start to get to the point where counting cards is a common thing, it's a matter of hiding it. So a lot of people keep like thumbtacks in their pocket. Sorry. Didn't mean to overwhelm.
No. Yeah, I'm familiar with it too, Joseph. So you're right.
Awesome. I have a logistics question for next week. In 7 days, it's Armistice/Veterans Day, which is technically a holiday. How are we about either meeting then or moving the meeting to Monday?
Don't we still have school? Like, or are they giving us school off?
We have school off.
We do?
Oh, okay.
Or that's what the library said, but I'll be working during class time on both days because I thought class would be canceled.
What day do we have off?
Wednesday.
I thought it was 1 week from today. Yeah.
Is something going on Wednesday?
I think it's just the anniversary of World War I ending.
Oh.
Right, Veterans Day. I think my chemistry class is not meeting on next Wednesday. Yeah, no classes. There you go.
So there are 3 bits
I'm good with Monday.
We can do Monday. That might be helpful in general in the future. I have 2 things left for our meetings after this. I have emotions and then neuroethics are the next 2 lessons, and then I'm done. And the rest of the semester is just going to be, I guess we're going to have a day or 2 with the quote poster session, which I'll give you guys logistics for next time. But the basic idea is going to be something like, I'll give you a 5-minute block, and you can either tune in the entire time and watch everybody else give their poster, or you can just log in for that 5-minute block and give me like a very, very short spiel for a minute or 2. And then I'll ask you a couple of questions about your quote poster. It's just going to be a single PowerPoint slide. And then we'll move on. So that'll come up after this. So there's only 2 content classes left. I mean, there's 3 content lectures left, 3 content videos left, but I think there's only 2 things left here for me to discuss. That's cool. Okay, let's do Monday then. Let's switch to Mondays for the 1, 2. Am I going to need? Actually, we can just switch to Monday permanently for the rest of the semester if that works for everybody. I'll send an announcement.
Yeah, we were thinking same time Monday.
Yeah. Does it not work for everybody?
Works perfect for me.
Works for me too.
Okay. I'll send an announcement, and that way we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meetings left. I only have things to discuss the first 2. And then we can start posters if anybody wants to be ready by the 23rd. I think on the syllabus it's not until the next week. But if anybody wants to get that out of the way, we can do that. Otherwise, we can just have regular conversations. Have like a big synopsis day. Cool. Okay, Monday it is. Monday the 9th. I'll see you guys. I'll see y'all there.
Cool. Later, Carlos.
Good job.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hey, real quick, is the poster on the final paper, like the content of our final paper, or is it distinct?
No, it's the contents of your final paper.
Okay, cool. All right, later, y'all.
Later. All right. Later.
I just had a question.
Sure.
On Callan, was it Callan?